So this movie almost didn't get released, and long story short, it was due to some poor online behavior from the film's director, and that's putting it nicely. Meanwhile, this whole movie's plot is pushed forward due to people engaging in toxic online behavior. Two totally different scenarios, but talk about irony. Guns Akimbo stars Daniel Radcliffe as Miles, a computer programmer who enjoys going online and making fun of internet trolls. When he insults some members of a crime organization called Schism, they kidnap him and bolt a gun to each of his hands. And now he's forced to participate in one of their twisted games where he has to face off against a killer named Nix, played by Samara, and the two have to fight to the death in a live broadcast. Daniel Radcliffe has gone down a very similar career path as Elijah Wood. He was the star of one of the most popular fantasy series of all time, Harry Potter, and after 10 years of making those movies, he's still acting, but he stepped way out of the spotlight. Like Elijah Wood after Lord of the Rings, the majority of his movies after Harry Potter have been the furthest thing away from mainstream, with starring roles in some truly bizarre films such as Horns and Swiss Army Man. And with this, he has yet another movie to add to his eclectic resume. And while this is far from the best of the bunch, this proves that once again, he can be a lot of fun to watch when he steps out of his comfort zone. So let's discuss. If there's one thing this movie is, above all else, it's fun. If you regularly like to watch action movies, this is right up your alley. It is both loud and fast, moving at a really quick pace. And it has pretty much every scenario you can ask for in an action movie. There are car chases, rockets exploding, montages of someone just going up against armies of other people, and it's accompanied by really stylish visuals that include settings such as massive cities or seedy crime layers. And it bounces from one thing to the other really quickly. It almost feels like we're progressing through the levels of a video game, which is kind of the point since this takes place within the context of a twisted, deadly game. And the editing is rapid fire as we cut back and forth between these fights and people watching it live in their homes. We'll get flashy visuals such as a scorecard or the amount of ammo that Daniel Radcliffe has left in his guns. And while it's fast-paced, the editing never feels disorienting and you're always able to follow what's going on. Daniel Radcliffe looks like he's having an absolute blast with this. This is him at his most unhinged. He's constantly on the move, and he has to adapt to a new surrounding every other scene. And the entire time, he's trying not to lose his mind, but when he does, he just completely lets loose. Such as one scene where he's had enough of this abusive boss at work, and he confronts him, and he just flies off the handle on him. And seeing him in this constantly high energy mode was really refreshing for him. Samara Weaving was also just as enjoyable. In fact, I'd say she's even the stronger of the two, and that's because her character is just a bit more developed. She acts as the counterbalance to Daniel Radcliffe freaking out every 2 seconds. She enters a scene with a wave of confidence, and we get montages of her fending off her enemies with such ease, all while making snappy quips. It's kind of like if you took her character from Ready or Not, which also had a fight to the death scenario, and you turned her into an 80s action star who always had a one-liner ready to go, except they're not as cheesy. So she was always fun to watch. While this movie is very energetic, at times it can feel very one-note in that regard. There is a lot of screaming and yelling throughout this movie, and there are a lot of scenes where it's nothing but that. The villains, the people working for Schism, can especially be a bit much at times. Most of their shtick is just they'll get up in Daniel Radcliffe's face, scream at him all wide-eyed, and issue threats or call him names. And I think it's meant to be played for laughs, except there's nothing funny said. They don't really say anything of interest other than just going up to his face and screaming incoherently. And there are a lot of moments like this, with a lot of characters, especially since we're moving constantly throughout the city. Daniel Radcliffe will bump into someone new and he'll be with them for a scene or two, and then he'll move on, and then we never see these characters again. And each of these new characters will just be someone yelling or talking in a funny voice, and that's the joke. Sometimes it just felt like this movie would try being weird for the sake of being weird. And while there are times that it worked, there are plenty of moments where it just falls flat, or worse than after a while. Also, Daniel Radcliffe's arc really wasn't all that believable to me. There's this sense that the filmmaker tried giving him a meaningful story, but it felt very shoehorned in. He narrates the movie, and he keeps commenting, especially in the first half, about how he always spends his time on his computer or on social media. And it's usually to the effect of, well, I was constantly online, now I have to get used to the real world, or something like that. The idea behind it is to show how people who constantly hide behind their computer can actually be in real life. But Beyond some comments, nothing meaningful ever really comes out of this. It's not like he really learns anything as a result of not being on his computer all the time. He's just worried about surviving this game. He'll just make some observations about how different the real world is compared to his computer, and that's it. Nothing gained. I commend there was at least an attempt at social commentary here, but it felt very half-hearted. And because of that, Daniel Radcliffe really doesn't have a good plight so that you can easily root for him, other than just being an unwitting victim in this organization's game. I honestly think Samara Weaving had a more compelling arc than he did, so you now have to rely on Daniel Radcliffe's performance as well as the action to keep you invested. And I was invested, it's just that in terms of writing, he's just not a strong character to follow. This was enjoyable. It's really nothing more than mindless entertainment, but that's not always a bad thing. It might feel a bit one-note at times, especially since this is not a character or story-driven film, and it misses the mark with its half-hearted social commentary. But if you like action movies, this serves up plenty of that for you, with a fast pace, extravagant settings, and a sense of creativity. And I hope that Daniel Radcliffe continues to appear in more movies like this in the future. It may not be his best, but it's original and entertaining. Definitely a nice change of pace from your typical mainstream movie. Guns Akimbo gets a 6.5 out of 10. This is mainly geared towards people who like genre movies or something that's against the grain. There's enough here to satisfy those fans, but if you're someone who's here for great story or great character development, this may not be your thing. But if you want to check it out, it's on VOD now. But let me know, did you see Guns Akimbo or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Do you want to see Daniel Radcliffe take on more roles like this, and what's one of your favorite action movies? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you see, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.